Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to your Lake Fork Guide, another episode of the Guides Network. You know, we've just come out of a transition. We've had a little bit of a fall bite. The tail end of that's going on, but we got another transition coming up. It's going to be the fall to winter transition. Now, this can be a tough time. A lot of things start changing. A lot of fish start really slowing down their feeding habits. So today I'm going to give you my top 5 baits for fall to winter transition. Well, like I said, guys, it can be a tough time of year. Like I said, the fish are coming off a fall feeding pattern. As these water temps start to cool down, and they will start very soon to cool down pretty drastically, it can really slow the fish's metabolism and feeding habits down. And you've got to use a lot of hard baits this time of year. I find myself using a lot of baits that are either really good at getting reactions out of fish, or they're really good at staying in their face for a long time. You can't just go around and do what you normally do, throw a shaky head, throw a Texas rig, drag a Carolina rig. You can't just go around and kind of feed the fish. You really have to make them bite. When we get into this fall to winter transition, you'll see that in the baits that we're talking about today. The first bait I'm going to talk about is probably going to embody that the very best, and that's going to be a jerkbait. Man, a jerkbait is a great bait for this time of year. It has such erratic darting action. It just triggers things within a bass that it can't say no to. No matter how much that bass doesn't want to feed, when that jerkbait gets in its face and pauses and it's sitting there staring at it, and it does this, it just lashes out at it. It can't help but react to it. A few different color patterns on jerkbaits that I'm going to throw. The first one for, you know, lightly stained water, somewhat cloudy days, overcast days, which we'll have a bunch of. I like to go to shad patterns that are like a hard solid color, like this one right here. That's called Tennessee shad, I believe. This is the 6 Sense Provoke 106X, my favorite jerkbait on earth right here. When we have today's conditions, if I'm fishing a jerkbait today, we've got relatively clear water, we've got super bright sunny skies, I'm going to go to more of a translucent. This one's called Violet Panda, and really, I don't know how well it showed up on camera, but you can see through the entire body. It's a really translucent pattern. Another one that's good is called Ghost Pro Blue. But any of those translucent shad type patterns are going to be good in these clear sky bright conditions. And then as we get a little bit later in the winter, that water starts to hold the stain in it a little bit longer. You start getting some of that dirty winter water. Man, there's a color called ditchweed that's red on one side, yellow on the other. Hey, in the middle of wintertime, this bait has really caught on for me. Don't overlook this old goofy looking jerkbait right here. In fact, one of our viewers last year picked it up and caught a daggum 13-pounder on it in the middle of winter. So it can catch a big one and catch a lot of them for you on that old ditchweed color. As far as setup goes, you know, setup's very, very important on a jerkbait. It's a pretty unique setup. It's not a rod and reel setup that I use on a lot of different techniques, but for a jerkbait, I'm going to throw a 6.9 medium action. That's right, medium action. It's the lowest power rod that I have, the bendiest, whippiest rod I've got. 6.9 medium. I'm going to throw that on 12-pound fluorocarbon line, and I'm going to throw it on a loose hyper mag with a 7-to-1 gear ratio. And guys, I'm not going to be able to go super in depth on all these techniques. We've just got too many of them to go over. But each one of these techniques, we do have in-depth instructionals on this channel. If you'll just search Your Lake Fork Guide Jerkbait, Your Lake Fork Guide, whatever bait it is in this video that you want to see, you will find an in-depth instructional on that particular technique. The next bait I'm going to talk about is also one of my favorites, of course. And when you talk about transition periods, right, you're talking about fish that are moving. When fish are moving, you got to find them. To find moving fish, you've got to cover a lot of water. Well, there's really not a better bait on planet Earth to cover a bunch of water while also drawing bites from finicky fish that don't really want to bite than a lipless crankbait. Hey, lipless crankbaits are phenomenal. My favorite one is the Quake 70 from 6 Sense Fishing. This is the Quake 70 regular, multiple BBs. This is the Quake 70 Thud. One single knocker in that one. Now, again, a few different colors that I'm going to throw. Of course, the closer to fall we are, the more I'm going to throw the shad patterns. So like right now, I'm still throwing a ton of shad patterns. This right here is called 4K Gizzard. It's a brand new color from 6 Sense Fishing. Really love this color right here. Hey, as we get closer to wintertime, I'm gonna start throwing a lot of the crawfish colors. This one right here is called boiled crawfish. I really like this when I'm wanting to throw a red pattern bait, a craw pattern bait on sunnier days. Hey, cloudier days or dirtier water, there's a bait called Tiger Truce, a color called Tiger Truce that I really, really like. You guys have seen us catch some big bags on this exact bait right here on this channel in the past. As far as my setup goes for my Lipless Crankbait, hey, I'm throwing that on the 7.5 medium heavy Divine Series 6-inch fishing rod. I like to throw it on 20-pound fluorocarbon unless the grass gets really thick, man. If I'm dealing with some thick grass, then I'm gonna go ahead and step up and throw 30-pound braid. That's gonna help me get that bait in and out of that grass efficiently. That's the whole key to getting bites with that bait. If you can be around vegetation, that's what you want to do, and you want that bait to just barely tick that vegetation and subtly pop out. You don't want to have to do big rips. So having the right line size on that rod and the right line type is going to help you be efficient and get that subtle little jump out of there. That's what's going to get your bites. As far as the reel goes, I'm throwing that on a Team Lose light, L-I-T-E, light speed spool in a 6.3 to 1 gear ratio. Now, we said there'd be a lot of hard baits. Hey, when I want to go big fish hunting, when I want to get a reaction from a bigger fish in a fall and winter transition, and I'm fishing shallow water, there is not a better bait on planet Earth than the Movement 80X. I've caught so many big fish in cold water on this bait right here. And what it is about this bait, if you'll look, the bill is wider than the body. It gives it a really wide vibration. What it also does is with that bill sticking out further than the head, when it hits something, it deflects so hard off of cover that it draws those ultimate reaction bites from those bigger bass. So if I've got a lake where I feel like fish are gonna live shallow in cold water, and hey, a lot of East Texas lakes are that way, and I've got some hard cover up shallow, whether it be rock, timber, brush, bushes, whatever it might be, a lot of East Texas lakes are that way, then the Movement 80X is gonna be a bait that I can put in my hand, cover some water, get some good deflections, and get some really key big bites with that bait right there. As you can see, shad pattern, I also do throw it. And this is Bone Reactor. Bone Reactor is another shad pattern. I just want to show y'all that one. Really good shad pattern bait right there. And then I also do throw the Movement 80X in the craw patterns as well. This one's a Lava Truce. It's kind of a craw pattern, kind of a mixture of everything, but I'll throw them in regular craw patterns as well as that Lava Truce. For a rod on the Movement 80X, that same 7.5 medium heavy Divine Series rod is my favorite rod for the Movement 80X. It's basically the same exact setup I'm throwing the Lipless Crankbait on. I want to throw it on 20-pound fluorocarbon. There's not a time when I switch over to braid, because if grass is really thick, the Movement 80X is not going to be my deal. I'm going to throw a Lipless Crankbait, maybe a chatterbait. I'll always throw the Movement 80X on 20-pound fluorocarbon and that same reel, that Team Lose light speed spool in a 6.3 to 1. All right, let's slow it down and get down with the get down, because one of the best winter baits for sure is a jig. Well, hey guys, they start biting that thing right now, and there's a few different varieties of jigs that you can throw throughout the fall to winter transition to get a bite. Now, what I love about a jig so much in this time period is that a jig will sit dead still and keep moving. That skirt keeps moving. The appendages on that crawl, when you use the right one, they keep moving. So you can still get a reaction bite from a jig that's sitting still. You kind of get the best of both worlds, where you can get fish to react to it, and it's going to sit in their face for a long time. Because when fish don't want to bite, remember, you either got to keep a bait in their face for an extreme amount of time. You got to fish really, really slow and kind of finessey, or you got to fish something that bounces hard, gets reactions, like a Lipless Crankbait, like a Jerkbait, like a Movement 80X. A jig can do both. You ease it over a brush pile limb, you ease it over a root system, you ease it over stump, and it goes thump, thump, and falls down. That can get your reaction bite. It hits the bottom, the skirt flares out. That can get your reaction bite. But also, while it's sitting there just doing this, moving with the water, that skirt, those claws, man, you can get a lot of good bites. That's one of the reasons, or that's the main reason that I feel like a jig is such a good bait throughout the winter time when fish don't really want to bite. It's also good. Now, let's talk about the varieties. We'll start with small and go to big. Finesse jig, I tend to throw this more on the fall side of things. This is the first one I pick up. There's a lot of young of the year crawfish that come out in the fall and get really shallow, and when I'm fishing around shallow cover, I really love a finesse jig. This is a ball head finesse jig from 6-inch Fishing. Great jig right here. Big stout hook, screw lock on the shank, trailer won't go anywhere ever. Just an awesome little finesse jig. I'm gonna kind of stick with green and brown as I transition from fall to winter. So like right now, I'm kind of thinking about starting to maybe lay that finesse jig down, and then I'm gonna go ahead and pick up a 1/2 ounce or a 3/8 ounce Divine flipping jig. This is going to be Crawfish Drone is the name of this color, green pumpkin trailer. All my trailers are stroker crawls. A stroker crawl from 6-inch is my favorite jig trailer that I've ever picked up. And I know this video sounds like a 6-inch plug, but if you get in my boat on any day, these are really the baits I'm using. Hey, and it doesn't matter, I'll use anything because I got to put fish in the boat. It just so happens that 6-inch is such an awesome tackle company that they make the best of a lot of different baits. Like the Movement 80X, there's not even another crankbait on the market that's anything like this. There is no Lipless Crankbait on the market better than a Quake 70. There is no Jerkbait on the market better than a Provoke 106X, and there's not another jig that combines hookup ratio and weedless traits better than the Divine Hybrid jig. It's unbelievable. Now, the colder we get, when we get towards the end of the fall to winter transition, start getting to winter, I'm going to pick up old Black and Blue. Again, when that water starts holding that stain longer throughout the winter, old Black and Blue, tried and true as they say, I'm going to put this in my hands, and it's going to be there all winter. 1/2 ounce Black and Blue jig, creek channel bends, root systems, brush piles, stumps. Man, this thing right here flat out gets it done. There has been many of the top 50 bass ever caught in the state of Texas have been caught on a Black and Blue flipping jig. It by far leads as far as catching the most of the top 50 bass ever caught in the state of Texas. This lure's caught more of them than anything else. As far as the setup goes, I'm going to go to a Century Series rod. I'm dragging this bait. I need a lot of sensitivity. I'm going to spend that extra money, get that Century Series rod. I'm going to throw it on a 7 heavy. That's my favorite jig rod. I'm going to throw this on 20-pound fluorocarbon as well. I'm also going to throw this on a Team Loose light speed spool, but we're going to go ahead and go up to 7.5 to 1 on the gear ratio. Last but not least is a bait that, I guess to best describe it, it's a bait that if they're biting this bait, you better be throwing it or you're not fishing for first if you're in a tournament. We're going to talk about the Alabama rig. An Alabama rig is for sure one of the most deadly baits in the fall to winter transition. Another thing about these moving fish is they'll get on these stop sign type of areas, and one of the best stop signs on earth is corners of bridge aprons and bridge pilings. Also docks that run out off secondary points, docks that are in good transition areas. Hey, there's nothing better to catch fish on around docks and bridge pilings and vertical cover than a daggum Alabama rig. It absolutely catches them. A lot of these fish will suspend when they stop. They'll be traveling and they'll suspend on these things. Nothing better to catch suspended fish than an Alabama rig. Great bait throughout the fall to winter transition. You can throw it in a lot of areas. Hey, this one's rigged up on jig heads. You can also rig them on belly weighted weedless hooks or even weightless EWG style hooks. You can rig your swim baits on that, and then you can throw it a little tighter to cover, such as standing timber or docks if you wish. If you're fishing relatively open water, especially around bridges and things like that, then the jig hooks work. The way this one is rigged up right here, this is a Smash Tech 8-blade Alabama rig. I got the 8 little willow blades here. I've got 6 cents Divine swim bait heads. These are 1/8 ounce heads. I also have an 1/8 ounce flashy swimmer rigged up on this one. These are all open top hook jig heads. This is the little 6 cents Divine swim bait in the 3.3 size. Hey, that's the size I like to throw on my Alabama rig. This one right here, this color right here is called White Ice, I believe, but man, you can throw any shad pattern color that you're comfortable with. Whatever you feel good that mimics the shad in your lake, mimics the watercolor, works best in that watercolor. I don't care, but it needs to be a shad pattern type of swim bait on your Alabama rig. As far as setups go, you're gonna need a big rod. I mean, this thing, even with 1/8 ounce weights on it, even weightless, this thing weighs quite a bit. Good luck, 6 cents makes one for you. The 7-foot 8-inch heavy Divine Series rod is an absolute broomstick. It's got a big huge handle on it. Helps you cast that big awkward Alabama rig really well. In fact, on that 7/8 heavy, I can take an Alabama rig like this and almost flick it around like a spinner bait, allowing me to fish it very accurately and precisely around all those bridge pilings and corners and dock corners as well. Of course, we're going to throw this one on 25-pound fluorocarbon. It's actually the line I like to throw on. Step all the way up to 25-pound. If it gets hung up, you do want to get it back. There's a lot of money tied up in that rig. So I throw it on 25-pound fluorocarbon. Hey, and I also throw this on a Super Duty reel. I can make a super long cast with that big rod and that Alabama rig. So I want to have a reel that'll hold a ton of line. The Lew's Super Duty LFSG is my preferred reel for an Alabama rig. And I'm going to go ahead and select the 7.5-to-1 gear ratio reel. Hey, I need to slow that down a little bit when I'm fishing it. Really, I probably should fish it on a mid 6-to-1 gear ratio reel, honestly, but I do kind of lean to the higher speed on reel speeds. Well, there it is, guys. There is my top 5 fall to winter transition baits. I certainly hope this helps you catch more fish during a tough time of year. One good thing about it, there's not a lot of people on the lakes this time of year typically, so get out and enjoy some beautiful cool fall weather. Go out there, grind out some bites, pick these baits up and try to trigger some of the, you can get some of the bigger bites that you'll ever get. You can get during this fall to winter transition. Fish are really starting to pack on the weight as winter comes on, so get out there, get after it. Use these baits. When you go to 6 Cents Fishing to order any of the stuff we talked about today, be sure you use that code YourLakeFortGuide. You'll get a 10% discount on all orders. Hey, thank y'all so much for watching today, and we'll see you next time right here on Your Lake Fork Guide.